Assalamu alaikum and welcome to day 4 of Aqsa Week Kids. Our story today begins in the desert near Palestine, and in this desert was a group of people who wandered and wandered with nowhere to go. These people were called Bani Israel, but who were these people and where did they come from? Let me explain. Many hundreds of years after Prophet Yusuf al-Islam, Allah sent another great prophet in Egypt. This prophet was called Prophet Musa al-Islam, and he saved the Bani Israel. Now, Bani Israel were the children of Prophet Yaqub al-Islam, and if we remember, Prophet Yaqub al-Islam had left Palestine and went to Egypt to be with his son Prophet Yusuf al-Islam. So Bani Israel are his descendants. Bani Israel were getting treated very badly in Egypt. The ruler at that time was this Pharaoh. Prophet Musa al-Islam managed to save Bani Israel by escaping from Egypt by this miraculous journey where Allah split the sea. They were safe. They headed towards the blessed land of Palestine. But when they got to Palestine, they didn't enter Palestine. I wonder why not? Well, they didn't enter Palestine because the people were many in number and they were very strong and they were scared. So instead, they had to wander the desert. Prophet Musa had passed away and they were still wandering the desert. Now, the leader of the army of the people in Palestine was massive. He was huge. He was very tall and he was very strong. He was like a giant. His name was Jalut. Now, everybody was scared of him. When they saw Jalut, they would get scared and they would run away. Now, amongst the Bani Israel, there was a little boy called Dawud. Now, Dawud was young, he was small, but he was very, very brave. Wow, was he brave and what? And he was not scared of Jalut. So when time came for Dawud al-Islam to face Jalut, what did he do? He remembered Allah and he asked Allah for help. With a little stone and a slingshot, he was able to defeat Jalut. Finally, the Bani Israel could enter the blessed land of Palestine, and this was a great victory for them. Now, as Dawud al-Islam became older, Allah gifted him with something very wonderful. Allah made him the king of Jerusalem and also made him the prophet of Allah. Now, this was great honor, and it shows us just such a special person that Prophet Dawud al-Islam was. Allah also gave Dawud al-Islam a book of Allah called the Zabur, and he was blessed with the most beautiful voice. So when Dawud al-Islam would recite the Dawud in his beautiful voice, all the people, the animals, the birds would gather around him and listen to these special words and learn these special words of Allah. Even the mountains would praise Allah with Dawud al-Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also made Dawud al-Islam very clever and wise. He was known to be very just and fair. So whenever people have arguments, they would always come to Dawud al-Islam because they knew that he would be fair. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also gave Dawud al-Islam another special gift, that when he was to hold hard metal in his hands, the metal would become soft and he would be able to bend it in all different ways and make different shapes and things. Now, Allah taught Dawud al-Islam how to make a special armor for himself and his army. Now, with this protection of this armor, his army became one of the greatest armies in the world. No one could beat them. For 40 years, Dawud al-Islam was the king of Jerusalem, and during this time there was so much peace and harmony amongst all the tribes in Palestine. When Dawud al-Islam was the king, he decided to rebuild Masjid Al-Aqsa, which was in ruins. So if we go back a little bit, we remember that Masjid Al-Aqsa was first built by the first human being and the first prophet, Adam al-Islam. After that, it was rebuilt by Prophet Ibrahim al-Islam and his son Ishaq al-Islam. Prophet Dawud knew just how special and important Masjid Al-Aqsa was, so he took on this important job of rebuilding it. Sadly, he passed away before he managed to complete Masjid Al-Aqsa, but it was finished by his son Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam. Prophet Dawud al-Islam was 100 years old when he passed away, and he was buried in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a very special place. It's called the land of the prophets because so many prophets have lived there and have died there. Masjid Jerusalem is also the home to Masjid Al-Aqsa. And many prophets, just like the Prophet Dawud, have a special connection to Masjid Al-Aqsa. Our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam also has a very special connection to Masjid Al-Aqsa. Do you know what that connection is? And do you know why it's so important? We're going to have to wait till tomorrow to find out. So now that we've heard our story, what do we learn from our story? So the first thing that we learn is that being just, fair and trustworthy, these are all very important qualities, and it's so important that we have these qualities inside us. Number two, what we learn is that whenever we're going to start something, whether it's a hard task or an easy task, we always start with Allah's name, and Allah will make it easy for us and put goodness into that task. Number three, we learn that Prophet Dawud al-Islam was a king of Jerusalem. Now this was a very important job with a huge responsibility, but still Dawud al-Islam took time out to recite the Zabur, which was a book of Allah at that time. We also have a very special book of Allah called the Holy Quran, which was given to a very special prophet who we love dearly, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we should also take time out to recite it. No matter how busy we are, we should sit down and recite the Quran as well. And number four, we learn the story reminds us again just how important Masjid Al-Aqsa is, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had this masjid rebuilt by two very special prophets. I hope you've enjoyed today's story and you enjoyed today's activity that comes with it, and inshallah I will see you tomorrow for day 5. Assalamu alaikum.